You speak with passion, but the people in front of you don't really seem to care. You might get a polite nod here or there, or a quick glance away from their phone, but they're not truly tuned in. It's frustrating because you feel your idea has value, yet it's slipping right past them. Robert Greene suggests there is a powerful key to make people listen. It might seem obvious at first, but it's often overlooked in the rush to be heard. This key is tapping into what matters to them before trying to push your own agenda. He emphasizes focusing on their self-interest, their motivations, and their emotional triggers. When you highlight how your proposal, idea, or story benefits them, they have a stronger reason to pay attention. It's not about lying or flattering, it's about recognizing that every person views the world through a personal lens. If you want them to remember what you say, you have to speak through that lens. Think about how many conversations turn into people talking past each other. One person is eager to say what's on their mind, while the other is simply waiting for a chance to talk about something else. When you speak in a way that makes the other person feel heard and validated, you stand out. You become a rarity, someone who gets where they're coming from. This is often more persuasive than loud statements or high-pressure tactics. Instead of telling them why you need them to listen, you show them how listening benefits them in some way. In Robert Greene's view, this approach is not manipulation in a cruel sense, it's being strategic with human nature as it is, not how we wish it to be. We are all at some level driven by personal desires: safety, recognition, success, peace of mind, and so on. When you tailor your words to those desires, people feel seen. One way to do this is by asking questions and paying close attention to how they answer. Ask about their experiences, their challenges, or their hopes. Listen carefully for the underlying values or fears. This is something that can't be forced. You have to show real curiosity about what drives them. People can sense when you're only waiting for your turn to speak. But if you truly listen, you will pick up small clues. They may talk about wanting stability, or they may mention a need for freedom, or they could admit they feel underappreciated. These are hints you can use to shape your message. If they talk about the need for stability, you can frame your idea as a path to more security or predictability. If they want freedom, show them how your plan could give them more room to do what they love. If they feel ignored, highlight how your idea acknowledges and values their role. Robert Greene would say that this is how you align your purpose with their inner world, making them more receptive to your ideas. There's a natural tendency in most of us to want to be the focus. We want our work or our efforts or our struggles recognized. If you truly want influence, you have to switch that perspective. Instead of wanting them to spotlight you, you shine the spotlight on them. It's a simple shift, but it takes deliberate practice. When you walk into a room or a meeting or even a casual conversation, pause and think, what are these people concerned about right now? Maybe they're worried about a new competitor at work. Perhaps they're thinking about an upcoming deadline or a family matter. If you come in only talking about your own objectives, you risk becoming background noise. But if you tap into the concerns they already have, you're speaking to what's real to them. Greene implies that people are wrapped up in their personal dramas. If your words tie into those dramas, they become more than just words. They become potential solutions, or at least reflections, of what that person is already experiencing. In this sense, the key to influence is empathy. But it's not the kind of empathy that simply says, I feel your pain. It's a strategic empathy that guides how you present your ideas. You are using empathy to structure your message so that the other person sees themselves in your words. If you were trying to encourage a friend who's facing rejection, you wouldn't start by explaining how sad you are, that you haven't had enough sleep. You'd focus on what they're going through and bring them a sense of understanding or hope. The same holds true in business or any other area. By showing that you see someone's problems or aspirations, you open a door. Once that door is open, your message can slip through and actually land. It's also important to realize that not everyone is the same. Two people might share a job title or a background, but have completely different drives. One might be motivated by the excitement of new opportunities, while the other is driven by a fear of failure. One might crave admiration from peers, while another wants to avoid attention altogether. This means there isn't a single formula for all interactions. Robert Greene reminds us that you have to observe each person and adjust your approach. That doesn't mean you become a chameleon with no personality of your own. It means you're flexible in how you present your thoughts so they resonate with different personality types. You can still be authentic, but you're picking the right angle or perspective to communicate that authenticity. Another subtle piece of Greene's advice is to let the other person feel that the idea or decision comes from them. People often defend ideas they believe are their own more fiercely than ideas imposed on them. If you push an idea in a way that makes them feel cornered, their natural response is to push back. But if you lead them to a viewpoint and give them space to connect the dots themselves, they experience a sense of ownership. They might say, actually, I think I see a better way to handle this. They might frame it in their own words, but it aligns with what you wanted from the start. You don't lose anything by letting them take a bit of the credit. In fact, you gain a strong ally because they now see it as their own solution. A key point here is patience. We live in a time when everyone wants quick results and instant attention. But genuine influence, according to Greene, is not built overnight. It's about finding the rhythm of each relationship and conversation. If you try to jump steps, if you rush in demanding to be heard, you will likely face resistance. Slow down and look for openings. Notice when the other person shows interest or asks a question. That's a signal you can expand upon. Also notice when they shut down or become defensive. That's a sign you should ease back, shift focus, or ask a question to re-engage them. The more you practice this dance, the more naturally it will come to you. Over time, you become a person who is heard because you've built trust, and you speak in a language that resonates with who they are. It's worth noting that influence does not mean tricking people into doing something against their will. Greene points out that real influence is sustainable only when it aligns with something genuine in the other person. If you dupe people, they will eventually realize it, and the trust you've built will crumble. Then you end up worse off than if you'd never tried in the first place. So the kind of influence we're talking about requires a level of honesty. You are showing them real benefits or genuine perspectives that match what they desire or need. You might highlight details they hadn't considered, but you're not inventing false promises. Sometimes being able to listen more than you speak is a powerful asset. You're giving the other person the stage, which can feel contradictory if your aim is to be heard. But think of it like a bank account of goodwill. Every time you listen deeply and respond with care, you deposit a coin into that bank. Later, when you need to present an idea, you can withdraw from that bank because they remember you as someone who actually pays attention. They are more open to hearing you out. This isn't about playing nice for show. It's a recognition that people gravitate toward those who make them feel valued. When you do speak, do so with clarity. The most compelling messages aren't always the loudest or the most dramatic. They're the ones that make people say, oh, that actually applies to me. Robert Greene's approach underlines the importance of being concise and relatable. If your words are too vague or general, they won't stick. If they're too complicated, people may feel overwhelmed and tune out. So combine empathy with clarity and you'll keep people from drifting off. We all crave influence at times. We want to be heard by our families, friends, co-workers, or even a broader audience. It's natural. Greene's big lesson is that to get that influence, we have to shift our focus. Instead of trying to force them to understand us, we work to understand them first. From there, we shape our words to reflect their interests, fears, and hopes. We build trust through empathy, patience, and genuine concern for how our idea might fit into their life. We encourage them to take ownership of the idea so they become a partner in it rather than a reluctant follower. And we do it all without losing our own authenticity, because influence is most powerful when it rests on a foundation of real connection. This might sound simple when laid out like this, but it takes practice. It requires you to put aside your own ego sometimes and play the long game. It means you might spend more time observing and asking questions than you're used to, but over time, you'll see a change in how people respond. You'll notice they lean in when you speak. They'll ask more questions, or they'll reflect your words back to you in their own way. And you'll see that even if you're not the loudest person in the room, you can become the one whose words have the most impact. That's the essence of Robert Greene's secret to making people listen. It's a matter of turning your attention outward first, and then shaping your message so it rings true in their world. And when it rings true in their world, it becomes something they can't ignore.